Update for the week of July 6th. Let us talk about Brit. For the longest time, we have watched her suffer under the heavy, suffocating cloud of a terminal illness. It shaped her every decision, her isolation, and her reckless desperation as she went on the run to protect the people she loves. But what if I told you this entire tragic narrative was a meticulously crafted, devastatingly cruel, fabricated illusion? The revelation that she never actually had the disease is not just a standard plot twist. It is a profound, terrifying psychological violation. Ross and Jens orchestrated this fake diagnosis to corner her, using her own mortality as a weapon to force her compliance in their cold fusion project. They stole her peace of mind and replaced it with a ticking clock that never actually existed. This is where it gets incredibly interesting for her character development. Think about how Brit has operated lately, constantly on the run, cornered in that sterile jail cell, screaming furiously at anyone who dares to get close to her. That is the erratic behavior of a woman who believes she has absolutely nothing left to lose because her own body is betraying her from the inside out. But the exact moment she realizes she has her whole life ahead of her, that desperate panic will instantly forge into weaponized, calculated rage. She is no longer a dying, helpless victim. She is a brilliant, resourceful doctor who has been played for an absolute fool. And she is going to pivot from a defensive posture to a proactive, lethal counterattack against the men who manipulated her existence. And that brings us perfectly to the mysterious visitor showing up at her jail cell. We know someone steps into that claustrophobic, tense space, but their identity changes the entire trajectory of her storyline. Could it be Jason, returning just in time to offer his signature brand of silent, lethal protection and unwavering loyalty? Or perhaps Liesl, driven by a mother's fierce, unstoppable need to break her daughter out of this legal nightmare by any means necessary? There is even a chance it is Sonny, looking to collect a favor or use her medical expertise for his own shadow war against his enemies. Whoever it is, this visitor is not there for a friendly, casual chat. They are the necessary catalyst that will spring Brit from her cage and unleash her righteous fury on the city. Now, let me pause and argue against my own instincts for a second, because I need to look at both sides of this coin. The show desperately wants us to believe Cassius is dead. We saw the chaotic fallout, we saw Liesl grieving in absolute devastation, and we saw Jocelyn actively pinning the blame on him to secure freedom for the others. It makes perfect narrative sense to tie up his loose ends, bury the imposter storyline once and for all, and let the canvas move on to new mysteries. If he is truly gone, it solidifies Ross as the ultimate irredeemable monster of this arc. But honestly, I just do not buy it for a single second. The intelligence agency is notorious for keeping useful assets in their subterranean back pockets, and Cassius fits that exact profile perfectly. If you look at the historical mechanics of that corrupt agency, they never, ever throw away a valuable piece on the board if they can leverage it for future gain. Cassius was not a criminal mastermind. He was a desperate, manipulated pawn controlled by a deeply corrupt system. I strongly suspect he is still alive, hidden away in some dark, undisclosed black site, being held as ultimate leverage. Imagine the immense emotional weight of this possibility. Liesl is currently drowning in grief, lashing out furiously at Jocelyn for smearing his reputation. If Cassius is alive, it means Liesl still has a chance at a reunion. A tiny sliver of hope in an otherwise dark, unforgiving universe. It completely recontextualizes his entire arc from a villainous imposter to a tragic hostage of a broken system. Speaking of that corrupt agency, we absolutely have to examine Jocelyn and her current trajectory. She has been playing a very dangerous, high-stakes game with Z, making secret deals and acting as the golden girl to secure freedom for Jason and Valentine. But Jocelyn is not someone who follows orders blindly for long. She has far too much of her mother's rebellious, fiery spirit in her DNA. I believe this upcoming week will mark her true awakening. She is going to start seeing the massive, ugly cracks in their polished armor. The realization that they are willing to cover up brutal murders and frame deceased men is going to sit like lead in her stomach, pushing her to question and ultimately rebel against the very institution she just bound herself to. This inevitable shift in Jocelyn is going to trigger a massive unprecedented evolution in Carly. Historically, her maternal instinct is a blunt, destructive instrument. When her kids are in danger, she storms the castle, burns it down, and screams at the ashes until she gets her way. We saw her doing exactly this recently with Z, aggressively demanding he fire Jocelyn and let her go immediately. But I think Carly is finally realizing that brute force will only push Jocelyn deeper into Shaquanch's. Instead, Carly is going to pivot to silent, strategic support. She will operate in the shadows, quietly helping Jocelyn dismantle the corruption from the inside rather than yanking her out by the collar. It is a mature, calculated version of Carly that we rarely get the privilege to witness. While Carly and Jocelyn navigate those murky, treacherous waters, we have the highly anticipated return of Jason and Valentine. These two men have been stripped of their freedom, manipulated, and pushed to the absolute psychological brink by forces beyond their control. Their journey back to the city is not just a geographical relocation. It is a dark, inevitable march of reckoning. Valentine, in particular, is holding all the crucial cards right now. He is not just returning to reunite with his loved ones and seek comfort. He is coming back armed with the exact, undeniable evidence needed to burn Ross and his entire operation to the ground, and he is going to use it brilliantly. Think about Anna's current fragile psychological state for a moment. She is trapped in a terrifying maze of her own mind, continuously plagued by dangerous, vivid hallucinations of Peter. She genuinely thinks she is losing her grip on reality, but the truth is far more sinister and external. Valentine is carrying the definitive proof of the psychological manipulation she endured, the hard evidence that Caesar's theatrics were a carefully orchestrated illusion designed specifically to break her mind. When Valentine lays this absolute truth out for her, it will be the grounding anchor she desperately needs to pull herself out of the madness. It is a beautiful, tragic dynamic. The man who once kept so many dark secrets from her is now the only one who can deliver the absolute truth she needs to survive. Shifting gears entirely to the domestic warfare happening across town, we have to look closely at Willow. She has been playing defense for weeks, constantly panicking over fabricated logs and crying in cold interrogation rooms while being aggressively accused of a hit and run she did not commit. But Willow has a spine of steel when she is pushed too far into a corner. I see her completely dropping the helpless victim act and actively, fiercely hunting down the person who framed her. She is going to stop waiting for a knight in shining armor to save her and start tearing apart the evidence herself, which is going to send massive, destructive shockwaves through her immediate circle of friends and family. And this brings us to the devastating tragedy of Harrison and Brooklyn. Harrison has been her staunch defender, the unwavering pillar of justice who firmly believes in her absolute innocence. But the fabricated evidence is incredibly damning and meticulously crafted to look perfect. For the very first time, we are going to see Harrison genuinely waver. That tiny hesitation, that small seed of doubt in his investigative eyes, is going to devastate Willow to her core. Meanwhile, Brooklyn is silently, guiltily pulling the strings, targeting Willow out of a desperate, twisted need to protect her own life and secrets. But Brooklyn is playing with absolute fire. Every single lie she tells to frame Willow is a structural brick removed from the foundation of her marriage to Harrison. When he finally uncovers her deep deceit, it will not just be a marital spat. It will be the absolute, unrecoverable destruction of their trust. Finally, we absolutely cannot ignore the lingering, quiet mysteries on the periphery that are slowly but surely converging into the main narrative. Ethan is currently sitting on a massive powder keg regarding Phoebe. The dark secrets he is keeping about her true paternity are about to spill over, adding yet another complex layer of chaotic betrayal to the canvas. He is going to reveal something that changes the entire context of her existence. At the exact same time, Elizabeth is quietly, intelligently observing the chaos surrounding Jack. She is incredibly perceptive, and I firmly believe she is going to realize that Jack is not the ultimate mastermind he projects himself to be, but merely a single, disposable cog in a much larger, terrifying conspiracy that threatens everyone. When you step back and look at the entire sprawling board, the sheer brilliance of this upcoming week becomes undeniable. The people we thought were pulling the strings are just dancing blindly on them. The assumed villains are actually tragic victims. The presumed dead might still be drawing breath in the shadows, and the innocent are finally sharpening their knives for war. It is an absolute masterclass in shifting perspectives and narrative deception. But it leaves me with one lingering, haunting thought. When the dust finally settles and the real invisible puppet master is revealed, will anyone left standing have enough of their soul intact to actually fight back?
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.